The senator from New Jersey.
I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be waived.
Without objection.
Madam President, I've come to the floor to speak again on behalf of children of New Jersey and others in the country, and the working families in my home state who seem to be under attack by some of our colleagues here on the floor. I didn't know that a child there's different values to the importance of the health care of a child regardless of the happenstance of where they live. But it seems that some think so. And on behalf of these children and families, I rise strongly to object to Senator Bunning's amendment. In New Jersey, we cover over 130,000 children, and yes, we cover children to a higher percentage of the federal poverty level. But there's a reason for that, and I'll go through that right now. But there are only 3,300 New Jersey children who are covered under that higher federal poverty level from the 130,000 that are covered below the poverty level that Senator Bunning and others would want to maintain. So we're talking about 3,300 children, but 3,300 children whose health and development and well-being depend upon the ability of states like New Jersey to do this. And the families who are covered at this level are paying towards this. They're not getting a free ride. They're paying $128 each month in premiums and between $5 and $35 in co-pays each and every month. So this is not a free ride. And these families in New Jersey are working, and they are working at some of the toughest jobs we have, but they work at jobs in which they do not have health care coverage, and they are working at jobs that do not give them enough in the context of what it costs to live in New Jersey to afford health care insurance. So somehow these people have to be penalized when you listen to the other side. Now, let me talk to those who want to talk about fairness. New Jersey followed the law. The former administration approved New Jersey's waiver to continue insuring kids at up to 300% of the federal poverty level because they understood the reality that a family living in New Jersey, to make essential elements of their costs for housing, for food, for transportation, for child care, and yes, for insurance, just were far behind others in the nation who in fact could achieve those goals for a lot less money. And so the Bush administration gave a waiver. They gave a waiver. They understood it. Now, New Jersey needs to cover children up to 350% because New Jersey's families face higher living costs and they get less return on their federal dollar. And let me talk about that. I hear my colleagues bemoaning the fact that my state allegedly wants some sort of special treatment, that because we want to provide health benefits to children, we are somehow taking advantage of the federal government. And that's simply ridiculous. Let me put it in perspective. For every dollar a New Jersey taxpayer pays in federal dollars towards the federal government, our state only gets back 65 cents. My colleague from Kentucky, who was on the floor and whose amendment we are debating now and rails about New Jersey, his state gets $1.51 for every dollar that Kentuckians send to the federal treasury. So they get more back than, in fact, they pay. So let's talk about fairness. Let's talk about fairness. You know, reality is one size doesn't fit all. You know, to get the same ability, let me have a previous chart here. For a family in New Jersey, living in Middlesex County, New Jersey, whose monthly income is roughly around $4,600. For their housing, it's going to cost them $1,331. For their food, it's about $645.70. For their child care, it's $844.80. For their transportation, it's $393.80. For their taxes, it's $479. And for their health insurance, it's almost $1,800. So what do they end up with? They end up with a negative amount in terms of their budget. These are people who are working, trying to sustain their families, but they end up in the negative if they try to provide health insurance for their families. So the answer is they can't provide health insurance for their families unless they get some help. Now, yeah, one size doesn't fit all. So let's look at that same family. For that family in New Jersey to get the same ability in terms of their purchasing power in Louisville, Kentucky, they need about $55,808. But for that same family whose happenstance happens to live in New Jersey versus in Louisville, Kentucky, for the same exact things, they need $77,000 roughly in purchasing power. Now, why do I have to hear an argument that says that those families, in fact, in whether it be Kentucky or Arizona or Oklahoma or Georgia or Tennessee or Utah or all these other states who, in fact, deserve to have their children covered. They deserve to have their children covered, and I'm fighting for their children to be covered as well. But why do I have to listen to that, in fact, their children are more valuable than my children in New Jersey who need this amount of money to be able to meet the same goals and dreams and aspirations and health care that they have? So they can get benefits under the bill, but my children in New Jersey should be denied. That's the core of the argument here. One size does not fit all. I'd love for a family in New Jersey at $55,000 to be able to make ends meet. That's simply not the fact. That is simply not the fact. So we need to ensure that all children are covered within this class. I am simply baffled, and I find it embarrassing that some in Washington, those who have some of the best health care coverage in the world, would propose to jeopardize coverage to some of America's neediest families. And in this economy, in this recession, we cannot allow our children to be the silent victims. It is morally wrong to jeopardize the health care of these children. What have they done? What have they done to deserve this? And it's even more outrageous during a time when jobs and homes are being taken away from their parents. Where is the moral compass in this chamber? You know, I hear from my colleagues eloquently about how our children are our most precious asset, and they certainly are. But they are also our most vulnerable asset. Is a child in New Jersey worth less than a child in other parts of the country, simply because of the happenstance of where they live and the costs that are necessary in order for them to meet the same quality of life? So I hope my colleagues, as other amendments have been rejected, will once again reject this amendment. And what this is about being for the value of life. You cannot fulfill your God-given potential if you don't have good health. You cannot say that you are pro-family when, in fact, you would take away the insurance necessary for that family to be able to realize their God-given potential. And this is about all children, regardless of where they happen to reside, the happenstance of what station in life they were born into, that if they fall in this criteria, that in fact they should be covered. That's why this amendment should be defeated, and I hope we can finally, after having taken amendment after amendment after amendment on the same fundamental issue, that we can finally move to final passage of this bill. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor, and with that observe an absence of quorum.